Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. And we are zooming in and focusing in a little bit more in depth in terms of understanding the why behind covert narcissist manipulation. And before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to those of you who have recently donated to the channel, particularly our lovely viewer in the Mississippi area of the United States. A lovely area, and it is so much an honor and a privilege to be able to reach out to you and help you understand and validate some of the specifics that have been taking place in some very difficult, confusing, and painful relationship situations and dynamics, and things that are costing people years off of their lives and really sort of costing them their life purpose as well. So thank you so much for your generosity, your input, and your comments. It really does help keep me inspired to keep the content flowing here on the channel. So thank you once again and love you. Thank you so much for reaching out. And I want to get started and really focus in a little bit more in depth in terms of understanding the why behind the covert narcissist manipulation, particularly that of withholding of information, withholding of emotional expression, withholding of validation, withholding of acknowledgement, really kind of the very hostile, passive-aggressive side. These people oftentimes come off as very strong and silent. So, in other words, there's an assumption that what harm could this person do? They seem to be very much to themselves, maybe an introvert, maybe they're just studying, working on something. Maybe they're just kind of working through things in their mind, and I'll give them the room, I'll give them the space, and then so you begin to make allowances for them. And that really becomes the first mistake, because initially that is an allowance that you make, a space that you give them, and then furthermore make excuses and allowances that become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So in other words, the fact that they're not speaking up, or the fact that they're not sharing valuable or vital information at times when it's needed or important. They just seem to make an internal assessment of it's me versus them. It's their needs versus my needs. And their intrinsic needs for this quietness, for this withholding of information, becomes more important than giving you the input, the guidance, the affection, the communication, just basic communication at its very guttural, instinctual level, is not offered. It is not pro-offered. It is not given. So the individuals in their environment then have the full burden and responsibility for kind of ruffling, the feathers, jostling the apple cart. Well, how are you today? How are you feeling? How's it going? How is this? How is that? You have to pry through, with a axe and hammer to try to get them to open up their feelings. So all the burden and responsibility becomes thrust on the individuals in their environment. And then we see the beginning of the martyr, syndrome, basically, where individuals are then exploited for their need for communication. And so this is very much unknown to the participant or the individual who is in a relationship to them. They just think, they make the mistake of assuming that if I just am positive enough, if I am modeling then the behavior that I want this covert narcissist to exhibit, we will be okay. In other words, if I'm positive enough, if I'm affectionate enough, if I'm giving enough, if I'm present enough, if I raise our children enough, if I work home, enough, you begin to make allowances and just, you don't realize that there's a lot of stressors that are then put on you. And that furthermore, that this then goes without acknowledgement. And so it just becomes really kind of into a vast abyss where there's no reciprocity, which is a fundamental of social psychology, is that there needs to be some give and take for a relationship. There needs to be some ebb and flow. There needs to be some, cheers, cheers together. High five, hugs. It's not like one is standing there and then the other is doing the hugging. That's really basically what ends up happening. You end up becoming a voice box for everything, and then this person, and they are not opening up at all. And this becomes a silent rage or a silent hostility because they just are nodding and acknowledging, and this can go on for years where it's just, and then they begin the emotional manipulation, which is then oftentimes done through visualization. So they will be, just blatantly ignoring you, just reading the paper on the computer, just going and not saying a word. So it's a very sort of quiet violence. And a lot of people have a difficult time because they can't say, you're abusive. It's hard to ascertain or point the finger at something which is not exhibited. So this person is taking, that to a whole nother level where it becomes this really sort of exasperated situation. And so then you are left defenseless. Why is this so hurtful? Because it is the total deprivation and spiritual starvation, emotional starvation, physical withdrawal that you are receiving that is tending to fester and create sort of a knee-jerk reaction emotionally, because you're crying out for that basic human respect, which is to be acknowledged, to have eye contact. And then, the emotional sensors begin to get deprived. So as you know, or you might not know, there are studies done where if you see, a hand being touched, or people hugging, or people shaking hands, or, various other sundry moves, you, or even on the violent side, if you're seeing somebody getting hit, your same somatosensory cortex in your mind, in your brain, is lit up, and it is stimulated. So you're then triggered. You might feel empathetically a handshake. You might feel empathetically a hug. You might feel empathetically a hit to the arm. You know what it feels like. And that's why people will watch movies and they'll be able to see, people hugging and then feel warm-hearted. They'll see people yelling and getting slapped and then feel pain. You can then feel that. And then, so when you are then deprived of this, you are then subconsciously deprived of that touch. So you begin to feel lonely. You begin to feel isolated. You begin to feel ignored just through kind of the lack thereof. So your brain begins to really ascertain that, you're not receiving that warmth, that touch, that, which is an innocent sort of look or even eye contact, which sets it's a nonverbal communication into play in your body, mind, and spirit. So it's a validating. It's as they say, the eyes are the window to the soul. So in other words, you're feeling soulless. Yet you can't really know it while it's occurring, because a lot of people don't know what is going on while they're in the midst of it. If it were violence, you could point the finger and say that's what it is, but that's the subtle and oftentimes pervasive chronic cruelty that becomes a very sort of passive hostility and passive violence, which then turns it turns your system on hyperdrive to try to figure it out and then solve for them. So you end up becoming a role model to them, and oftentimes giving them without being able to receive. And then the whole circuit is set up where you then feel uncomfortable receiving, yet you're crying out for it, and the conflict ensues. So, I want you to make a very clear distinction that it is the withholding that is causing the abuse, and you're not able to make informed decisions. You're not able to be decisive because you're still needing those intrinsic needs satisfied. Yet you're trying to jump ahead and grow in the relationship, and it's not able to. The covert narcissist will not budge. So they hold very dearly and tightly to that silence and that lack of giving. They feel very justified in being the way that they are. Again, it's the me against them sort of perspective that they have that creates this problem it creates the problem in the beginning. It is the cause of the conflict throughout it all. It is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. And I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.